What is going on, everybody? Hope everybody's enjoying their days so far. We are back with another Fantasy Football Live show where we'll be talking about the Week 6 Fantasy Football starts and sits. We'll also be doing a Week 5 takeaways. So we'll be doing our annual studs and duds for the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. We're also going to be looking at how our team did in week number 5 to see if we got back on the win column, because in the past couple of weeks, we have been taking a loss, so hopefully we can get back on track. We'll also discuss some injuries that you need to be looking out for heading into week 6. And then we'll also get into some players to start and sit. So that's going to be the lineup of the show. That's how we've been doing it every single week here. And like I mentioned at the top here, if you have any questions pertaining to start-sit questions or trade questions, drop them in the chat, and we will get to it throughout the duration here of this show. So let's go ahead and dive into some Week 5 takeaways. Just a reminder, we do have some more bye weeks in week number 6. So you saw some teams be on the bye in week number 5. That's going to continue throughout the rest of this season. So just keep that in mind when you are setting your rosters. And the Thursday night game is between the Giants and the Eagles. So we do have a Monday night doubleheader. So just keep that in mind when you are setting your roster. So we do have a question coming in here. Let's go. This is a trade question from Big Bill's guy here. Are you trading Chase Brown for Brian Thomas Jr.? Now, this is going to be a big question for, I think, a lot of people moving forward, is especially with Joe Flacco being traded to the Cincinnati Bengals. What does that, really do to Chase Brown's stock? Brian Thomas this is a lateral move, to be honest with you. So if you really need just a wide receiver, I would definitely make this deal. But if you need a running back like Chase Brown, but to be honest with you, you just got to get something for him. So yes, I would do this deal for Brian Thomas Jr. I think a lot of people are on the fence about Brian Thomas Jr. after the struggles. But I mean, he's the leading receiver on one of. It's not one of the best offenses in the AFC, but it's a favorable one. So, yes, I would do this trade for Chase Brown from Brian Thomas. Let's go ahead and get to another question here. Would you trade away DeAndre Swift for Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard? I would definitely do this. Rico Dowdle has a plus matchup we'll be getting to in our fantasy start of the week. Chuba Hubbard probably won't be playing this week. More than likely will be back in week number 6. DeAndre Swift, I'm pretty much out on him. I know that the Bears offense has been solid, but I trust Rome Odunze and Rome Odunze only in this offense. And if you need a quarterback, Caleb Williams. So yes, I would do this package deal to get the 2 Panthers running backs. All right, so let's go ahead and get to some week 5 takeaways, as we always do here on the show. We're going to be doing our studs and duds. So leading off will be our quarterback stud of the week. And that's going to be Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys getting back on the win column against the New York Jets. And honestly, the score wasn't what this game turned out to be. This was a blowout for the Cowboys. The Cowboys offense continues to impress me week in and week out, even with CeeDee Lamb being out with an injury. You're seeing guys like Javonte Williams step up, Jake Ferguson, and George Pickens really get a lot of targets in this offense. And Dak Prescott, if he's on your waivers or on your bench, I would definitely start him moving forward. It looks like he's a viable fantasy football quarterback. But 237 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, so the volume is definitely there in the passing. He also gives you some, rushing upside. It's not as elite as you're going to see as like Josh Allen and Lamar, but 7 attempts, 28 yards. That's some added points to his day, and 29.28 fantasy points against the Jets in that win. So Dak Prescott really playing well, and you're going to get CeeDee Lamb back in a couple of weeks, and that's only going to improve his stock moving forward. So if you need a quarterback to trade for, or if he's somehow, some way on your waiver wire, definitely go pick up Dak Prescott. But this might be a quarterback moving forward that you want to trade for. Now let's move on to the running back stud of the week. We just had a trade question for him, and we're going to bring him up. Won't be the last time that we bring up Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers. And Chuba Hubbard out, Rico Dowdle in, and what a performance by Dowdle. 23 attempts, 206 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. So phenomenal day. If you pick them up on the waiver wire and plug them into your lineup, it's more than likely that you got to win in week number 5. 3 receptions, 28 yards. So all that volume on the ground, he really complements it with some much needed receptions, especially in PPR formats. 3 receptions for 28 yards, 34.4 fantasy points. So if you were lucky enough, like I mentioned, to start Rico Dowdle, you were feeling pretty good about that. We do have a question coming in here. Hi, I'm in a PPR league. Would you trade Brian Thomas Jr. and Jaylen Warren for Odunze? I have Gibbs, Dobbins, Henderson, and my other running backs. To me, this is a no-brainer. I view Rome Odunze as a rest of season top 10 wide receiver. Plus matchup this week against the Washington Commanders, and Commanders secondary, has really been gettable. So yes, Jaylen Warren, who even knows, he's coming off of an injury. Will he play this week? You don't know. Brian Thomas Jr. inconsistency. I'd rather just take the upside and the consistency of Rome Odunze to add to your squad. So, yes, I would do this deal. All right, let's go back to our wide receiver stud now, Rico Dowdle from Kendrick Bourne of the San Francisco 49ers. And week number 5 really was just, if you plug in like these guys, I mean, you just had a phenomenal week in fantasy football. Kendrick Bourne of the San Francisco 49ers, and once we will get to the injuries, we will talk more about this 49ers offense pretty much being discombobulated with all these injuries. But on Thursday night against the Rams, you had no Brock Purdy, you had no Juwan Jennings, and no Ricky Pearsall, as well as no George Kittle. We won't have Kittle back till week 7. But 10 receptions, 142 yards, good enough for 24.2 fantasy points. So that was a heck of an outing for Kendrick Bourne. So like I mentioned, if you're in deeper leagues and we're able to snag Kendrick Bourne, I think moving forward, just watch the injury report this week. I think if Kendrick Bourne is still the only healthy wide receiver in this offense, I would definitely go pick him up this week, especially if you need a win this week to really save your season. So Kendrick Bourne is our wide receiver stud for week number 5. Now let's go on to our tight end stud. We're going to stay in the division here, go with A.J. Barner of the Seattle Seahawks. And what a barn burner that game was between the Seahawks and the Buccaneers. 2 explosive offenses going at each other. 7 receptions, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns, 24.3 fantasy points. So I think that if you need a tight end, Barner may be an option, especially in deeper leagues. Whenever the Seahawks are getting into the red zone, Sam Darnold is looking towards A.J. Barner, and you're seeing that the touchdown production. That's exactly what you want. And it's been consistent production over the past couple of weeks. So good enough for 24.3 fantasy points, even in loss to Tampa Bay on Sunday. So Barner might be a tight end just to look on your radar as we go through these weeks, with George Kittle coming back from injury with some inconsistencies, with Mark Andrews and other tight ends. So A.J. Barner, definitely keep an eye on him as we move through this season. All right, that is our studs of the week in week number 5. Now let's go on to our duds of the week. And there was definitely a lot of quarterbacks that I could choose. But I started this guy in one of my league, and honestly, he didn't really provide what I was looking for. Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is a guy that definitely you need to start alarming on, because this was supposed to be a plus matchup, and he only got 15 fantasy points on the day. It was looking like a good start because the Cardinals, got off to a hot start, and then they ended up blowing it in the fourth quarter. Outside of that rushing touchdown, he had 4 attempts, 25 yards. Kyler Murray isn't really providing that upside in the passing game. Like, no passing touchdowns or nothing in this game whatsoever. You really just got the points from yardage in this game. So I'm pretty close in my league to just dropping Kyler Murray because I have Bo Nix and Caleb Williams. But I would just hold on him for now, maybe just wait for a better matchup. But this was supposed to be one of our better matchups of the season against the Tennessee Titans. So Kyler Murray is definitely a quarterback that I'm starting to get concerned on moving forward. Running back dud, everybody was shouting at the mountaintops for Woody Marks' explosion this past week in week number 5 against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Texans on the bye week. So, I mean, maybe if somebody's desperate, you could potentially shop Woody Marks. I don't know how much you can get for him. But we'll see what this backfield looks like heading into – it was a blowout, so the circumstances for Woody Marks wasn't that great. You saw a lot of Nick Chubb, though, so that's definitely concerning if you are holding on to Woody Marks, as Marks in this blowout win over the Ravens had 7 attempts, 24 yards, and only 2.4 fantasy points. So if you plugged him into your lineup, he honestly might have cost you your week entirely of how bad that he performed this week. And even when, the Ravens were down this game and the Texans were up big, we didn't even see any of Woody Marks in garbage time to really save the day for him. So Woody Marks definitely concerned moving forward, especially with the way that this running back group was looking like, because Woody Marks had a blowout game in week number 4, and then in week number 5, we were thinking, okay, this is going to be a plus matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, and then he just comes out with a dud. So Woody Marks is our RB dud of week number 5. Wide receiver dud is Jameson Williams of the Lions. Now, I was very high on Jameson Williams heading into the season. I thought that this was going to be an absolute breakout season overall for Jameson Williams in this Lions offense. But, man, tough outing once again. You just really haven't had that blow-up game that you really see from Jameson Williams, especially last season. It felt like it was every other week. But only 1 reception, 9 yards, and 2 fantasy points. So moving forward, do you start Jameson Williams? No. Unless the matchup is right. We thought the matchup was right against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's his best matchup you're going to get outside of maybe facing off against the Dallas Cowboys secondary. But Jameson Williams moving forward, definitely a guy that you're keeping on your bench for now at the moment, because you're getting to the point of fantasy football, especially if you're like hovering over 500, or maybe you only have 1 win on the season. You can't really start a guy like Jameson Williams. You really need points to really stack up those wins to lock up a playoff spot moving forward. Another tight end dud. Well, this tight end might as well not even play because he didn't do anything. Zach Ertz of the Washington Commanders, 0 receptions, 0 fantasy points. Now, I do expect a bounce back for Zach Ertz. It is a good matchup against the Chicago Bears. The Bears' defense has definitely been gettable through the pass. So this was definitely an alarming game for Zach Ertz, because Zach Ertz really has been one of those consistent fantasy tight ends this season. But 0 receptions, only 1 target. So he did get targeted once, but really outside of that, 0. That is right. Not a typo. Goose egg in fantasy points. So Zach Ertz is our tight end dud of the week. Okay, now let's go ahead and shift to week number 6. We're going to be talking about the injuries heading into week number 6 of players that you need to be keeping your eye on. So it's more than likely that Lamar Jackson is not going to be playing this week. So Derrick Henry, another tough matchup this week against the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, if you drafted Derrick Henry, you're more likely going to have to start him unless you have a better option at your running back position. Really, the wide receivers still going to get affected. Zay Flowers probably wouldn't start him. I would maybe, if you have a better option on your bench, I would start another wide receiver. Mark Andrews, I am benching completely this week. Don't really trust Andrews in a tough matchup against the Rams. I mean, the Rams secondary, we just saw Mac Jones in this offense have a field day, but we'll just have to see this Sunday when the Ravens take on the Rams. But other injuries to watch out. I talked about this of Kendrick Bourne, the wide receivers and the quarterback situation for the 49ers. Brock Purdy, who knows if he's going to play this week. So if he doesn't, Mac Jones would be the starter once again. And then you have Juwan Jennings, and then Ricky Pearsall still questionable. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, George Kittle still on the injured reserve. Won't be back till week number 7. So if you do have George Kittle, you'll be getting him back next week. So really some other injuries or really note of. Rashee Rice's return will be next week. So we will definitely talk about more Rashee Rice in next week's show, just how that's going to be affecting the wide receivers of Kansas City. Obviously, Rashee Rice's stock will move up. Xavier Worthy, guys like Tyquan Thornton will more likely fall down. And then we're still dealing with some injuries for Tampa Bay's wide receivers. Mike Evans is going to be out this week. Chris Godwin will be playing. Joe McMillan probably won't be seeing him until week 10. And then there's also some other wide receiver injuries with CeeDee Lamb. And then the big one this week is definitely Omarion Hampton going on the injured reserve. So like I said on my waiver wire video, you could either pick up Hassan Haskins or Kamani Vidal if you do need a running back, if you are an Omarion Hampton owner. There is a kicker injury as well. Spencer Schrader of the Colts headed to the IR. So if you do need a kicker this week, there is definitely some nice options. You can go with Eddie Pinheiro, Matt Gay for the Commanders. You could go either with Jason Myers. So those would be my top options if you do need a kicker to replace Spencer Schrader moving forward. So that's just some injuries to keep an eye out. Let's get to another comment here. Would you trade Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift for Saquon Barkley and Garrett Wilson? So Barkley would definitely be an upgrade that you're getting Jamar Chase and Garrett Wilson. I honestly have no idea what Joe Flacco is in this, how this offense is going to operate, to be honest with you. So it's very tough. Garrett Wilson, it's going to be very hard for me to see Garrett Wilson continue this run of being a top 10 wide receiver. So I would actually hold on to Jamar Chase here and DeAndre Swift. I know that Saquon Barkley is an upgrade, but Saquon hasn't really been putting up the numbers that you're really looking for. So I'd hold on to Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift just to see what week one of this experiment with Joe Flacco looks like of this offense. Okay, we're going to continue on with week number 6 here with our fantasy starts and sits. So like I mentioned, if you have any trade questions or starts or sits for the week, drop them in the comments and I will get to it throughout the duration of the show. So week 6 fantasy starts and sits. As I always do here for the starts, I give you 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. And then for the sit, we just do 1 for each position. So let's go ahead and dive into our week 6 fantasy starts of the week. And we're going to give you 2 quarterbacks to start this off. And that's going to be the first one being Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Herbert coming off of, I don't want to really say a dud. It was an average fantasy game for Justin Herbert in week number 5. But I do expect a big bounce back for the Chargers in this offense. I mean, we saw Ladd McConkey get a touchdown in this game, which was definitely exciting if you do have Ladd McConkey. So just heading in, just looking at his projected totals, 19.3 fantasy points, projected passing yards at 253.9, and projected passing touchdowns at 1.7. I think that the reason why that I say that he's going to have a big bounce back game, look at this matchup against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins defense has been absolutely terrible. Look what they just did against Rico Dowdle and the Panthers. I know most of those yards came on the ground. That's why I was saying I think that Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal could also have a big day against this Dolphins rush defense that is definitely very prone. But the Dolphins have allowed the 3rd most points to the quarterback position. So I think that this is a very plus matchup for Justin Herbert. And I'm starting every receiver. If you have Vlad, you start him. QJ, you start him. Keenan Allen. I think that everybody's going to be feasting against the Dolphins. The Chargers looking for a bounce back after they lost back-to-back games. So look for Justin Herbert and this Chargers offense to really respond in a big way against Miami. Now the next quarterback is going to be Jordan Love. We did have Jordan Love a couple of weeks ago when he played the Dallas Cowboys. Said it was a plus matchup, and he was able to thrive in that 40-40 game that we saw on Sunday night. But Jordan Love, Packers offense, coming off of the bye week, another plus matchup. You're going to see a lot of plus matchups in our starts of the week. Against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Bengals defense that have allowed 19-plus points to 3 quarterbacks so far in 2025. So looking at projected pass touchdowns is at 2. So it's not like 1.5. Projecting him to get to at least 2 passing touchdowns. And I think that this is definitely a get-right game for the Packers. This offense has been struggling before the bye week. So Jordan Love and the Packers, this is a really good matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Jared Goff and the Lions was able to have some success against the Bengals. I expect the same for Jordan Love in this Packers offense. So start Jordan Love and start Justin Herbert this week. Also like Matthew Stafford. Stafford's really been cooking, playing like MVP. So if you do need another quarterback option to start, Matthew Stafford would be my honorable mention for week 6. Now let's go on to the running back start of the week. First up, we're going to go to the AFC North. That's going to be the rookie Quinshon Judkins of the Cleveland Browns. And after a couple of weeks in the season, the Browns' whole entire rush committee was looking terrible. But now you have Dillon Gabriel as your starting quarterback since the Browns just traded Joe Flacco. So your quarterback room is now 2 rookies with Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. Now, I know the Browns offense didn't look that great. Honestly, didn't even look that terrible. They almost won that game in London against the Minnesota Vikings. But looking at his projected totals, 14.6. Now, this is based on a full PPR format. So not only are you going to get 2 points for the rushing upside, but also the passing upside as well. But the matchup is against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think if you told me in the preseason, we would be staying away from the Pittsburgh Steelers. But honestly, the Steelers' rush defense has really been gettable this season as 3 fantasy running backs have scored 16-plus points, through at least 4 games this season. So Quinshon Judkins has really just been a PPR machine. So I definitely start him if you have him as your flex, as your RB2. I would definitely plug in Quinshon Judkins in what could be a plus matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now let's go on to the next running back. I think that Rico Dowdle, once again, is going to have a solid day this week in week number 6. So, I don't even know if we're going to have Chuba Hubbard this week. Sound more than likely that we're not. So it's going to be the Rico Dowdle show. In the matchup, it is a revenge game against his former team and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, is he going to put up 200 rushing yards? Who knows? This man is you can see he's posting and saying that he's coming for the Dallas Cowboys this week and he wants his revenge. But 3 running backs so far have put up 17-plus points against this Cowboys defense. And we really just saw Breece Hall really have a good game against the Dallas Cowboys, even in a blowout. Now, I could see this matchup be close against the Cowboys, but, the Panthers' offense has been struggling as of late. They were able to get going in that big victory in week number 5, and Rico Dowdle was a big part of that. So give me Rico Dowdle all day, every day in week number 6. Now let's go on to our wide receiver options. The first one is going to be Deebo Samuel. Now, Terry McLaurin more likely won't be playing in this matchup, so fire up Deebo Samuel in your lineup. Another running back, too. Even JCM. JCM had his breakout game. He does have a plus matchup against the Chicago Bears. Deebo Samuel. Talk about the matchup against this Bears secondary that have allowed the 5th most points per game. 2 slot wide receivers. And Deebo Samuel, without Terry McLaurin, has been that alpha wide receiver 1. And you saw Jaden Daniels back. And Deebo Samuel had a nice game. And then you got that late touchdown to really put him over the top, getting over double digits in PPR formats. We're looking at his projected points at 15, receiving yards is at 59.4, and receiving touchdowns at 0.5. I wouldn't be shocked if he does get that touchdown, but I expect this matchup to be one of the more higher scoring games of the weekend. The Bears offense and Caleb Williams has been rolling. So I really expect this to be a crazy higher scoring game. That's going to give you enough touchdowns that Deebo Samuel could definitely find the end zone on Monday night. Now let's move on to our next wide receiver. We're going to go back to that matchup against the Cowboys. It feels like we're just feasting against the Cowboys this week in fantasy. That feels like that's been really the talk of the season so far. Ted McMillan of the Carolina Panthers. Now, Ted McMillan has really been a bumpy road so far. I know if you're a Ted McMillan fantasy owner, you haven't really gotten the production that you drafted him at. I think that this is definitely the matchup that you've really been waiting for against the Cowboys, who have given up the most points to perimeter wide receivers in all of fantasy football. And I know that Bryce Young hasn't really been that great overall. But I think that, Ted McMillan is a clear wide receiver 1. There's really no competition outside of them. And the running backs, Rico Dowdle does get some receptions, but not enough to really, really bite into Ted McMillan's target share. So I do expect Ted McMillan to really have an explosion game. Every wide receiver, it feels like, Garrett Wilson coming off of a solid outing against this Cowboys defense. It feels like every wide receiver in fantasy has. So if this is a matchup for Ted McMillan to get to that 20-plus point threshold, it would be this game against the Cowboys. So that's our receivers for the week. Now let's go on to the tight ends. And that's going to be Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. We already noted his quarterback, Jordan Love. Now we're going to go to Tucker Kraft. And Tucker Kraft, outside of 1 or 2 weeks, has really been a consistent fantasy tight end option this season. And the matchup, like I mentioned, against the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the worst defenses in all the National Football League. And the Bengals have allowed 3 tight ends to score in really 5 games so far this season. So 13-plus points overall in the 5 games that the Packers have played. And, this Packers offense is definitely going to have, could even get them to 30 points. I think Josh Jacobs would be a phenomenal start this week. And Matthew Golden also as well, the wide receiver position, maybe Romeo Doubs too. But honestly, if you have any Packer, I would definitely play him because I could definitely see this one getting out of hand against the Bengals. But, hey, we saw Joe Flacco beat the Packers once. Could he do it again? Who knows? It's craziness of NFL. But Tucker Kraft is the start for the week. Next tight end is going to be Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots going up against the New Orleans Saints, the defense that allowed 5 tight ends to score 9-plus points so far this season. And Hunter Henry, if you picked him up a couple of weeks ago, he was on our waiver wire video, has really been nice to you. I know he's coming off of okay performance. He got 9 fantasy points in PPR formats, but week 6 projected total points is at 10.4. Receiving yardage, 44.4, and then receiving touchdowns is at 0.4. So this is a nice matchup going up against the Saints defense. That's definitely gettable and favorable for tight ends. So that is our starts of the week for week number 6. Now we will move on to our week 6 fantasy football sits of the week. Like I mentioned, we'll be just giving you one per position. So let's go ahead and go to the quarterback. And I know that this is going to be kind of maybe not what you were expecting going into this, but Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions is going to be a sit. Now, if you don't really have any other options, then I would still start Jared Goff. But if you have better options, like maybe a Justin Fields, or like I mentioned, if you do have an opportunity to pick up Matthew Stafford, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs have just allowed 2 quarterbacks to score more than 11.5 points this season. So the Chiefs against quarterbacks has really been solid. I know the Lions offense has been one of the best in the NFL outside of that week 1 matchup against the Packers where they really got shut down. Looking at his projected totals, I mean, his passing touchdowns at 1.8, projected total points at 17, and then 252.3 passing yards. So it's not going to be that bad of a matchup, but will he get to 20-plus fantasy points? That's what I don't really know what's going to happen in this matchup. So very little bit of hesitancy with Jared Goff. We do actually have Jared Goff on our roster we'll be looking at here in a couple of minutes. We'll see what we do with him. Maybe we bench him, maybe not. But if you do have another option, I would go outside of Jared Goff for the week. Now let's move on to the running back, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. Now, Alvin Kamara, there is some rumors going around the league if he's going to get traded or not. So if you are an Alvin Kamara owner, just keep an eye on that. And if you're not, Kendre Miller will definitely shoot up every single running back rankings that we have. But the matchup against the New England Patriots is a tough one as they just held one of the most consistent fantasy running backs this season in James Cook to only 4.9 points in the Sunday night matchup that we saw in week number 5. And Kamara, his receiving yard volume is still there, but the rushing volume is definitely getting more split between him and Kendre Miller so far. So not the production heading into the preseason that we expected from Alvin Kamara. The Saints offense, hasn't been that great, but it hasn't been terrible. They've been able to get to the end zone a couple of times. But Alvin Kamara, if you have another running back or even a wide receiver, because he's more likely going to be in your flex, I would bench Alvin Kamara this week. Now let's move on to the wide receiver. I know that Brian Thomas has been in several trade questions that we've gotten tonight. But I'm benching him once again. It's a tough matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. Now you're going to tell me, well, the Seahawks just gave up a buku amount of yardage to Mike Ibuka, and they scored over 30 points. Now, it's not going to happen every single week when you're playing the Seahawks. More likely not, because this is one of the most talented secondaries in all of the league, and I do expect a bounce back from the Seahawks. Honestly, I do expect this to be a defensive game between the Jags and the Seahawks, and the Seahawks have just allowed 2 touchdowns to perimeter wide receiver. So Brian Thomas, to really have a solid day against the Seahawks, is going to have a ton of yardage to get to where he needs to be. And really the volume hasn't really been there. I know he got that big catch to set up that game-winning touchdown that Trevor Lawrence got to beat the Chiefs. But really before that, he wasn't really doing too much. He only had like 7 PPR points heading into the fourth quarter. He was able to save that day with that long catch. But Brian Thomas Jr., if you have a better option, once again, I would bench him. But honestly, as early as you drafted him, you might as well just stick it out with Brian Thomas. But it is a tough matchup going up against the Seahawks defense. So I do expect to bounce back. I'm not just saying that because we do have the Seahawks as our defense, but I just think that they're just too talented for offense and just continue to put up 30-plus points against them. Now let's go on to our tight end. I feel like Mark Andrews is just reserved a spot as our sit of the week here at the tight end position of the Ravens. The matchup against the Rams isn't that daunting that we thought about in the preseason, but the injuries piled up on the offense. Really with Lamar Jackson, his snap count is continuing to drop. I think that may have something to do with Lamar Jackson, but even when Lamar Jackson was healthy, Mark Andrews was very inconsistent. But looking at his totals, it's very low. 8 projected total points, 35 receiving yards, and 0.3 receiving touchdowns. I just think that this is going to be another game where the Ravens are going to be down early and often against the Rams. They are going to have to throw the football more, but I just don't really expect Mark Andrews to do anything. Now, I'm going to say that, and probably he's going to explode, but I'm going to sit Mark Andrews in this game, especially if Isaiah Likely is back from his injury. That just adds to the concern heading into week number 6 of all the Baltimore Ravens. So that is our fantasy starts of the week for week number 6. Now we're going to dive into going back to week number 5, seeing how our team did. Then we will look at what has happened, overnight in the waiver wire. And then we'll also see if we need to make any changes to both the starting lineup and who we have on the bench. So let's go ahead and pull up our team here to see if we bounce back in a big way. Looks like we did. And we actually got a blowout victory in week number 5, 147.72 to 79.1. So we move now to 3-2, third place. So after dropping back-to-back games, we were able to salvage a win here. And the team, let's go through, this really how both starters did for both teams. So Jalen Hurts versus Jared Goff, pretty even. Hurts had 19.5. Hurts, looking like he was going to get a 20-plus fantasy outing. And the Denver Broncos in the fourth quarter had something else to say about that. Jared Goff against the Cincinnati Bengals, I was expecting more, but you know what? We'll take 20 fantasy points every single week. Isaiah Pacheco versus Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley took that one, 17.8 to 8.6. Tony Pollard actually won the matchup against Alvin Kamara, 14.8 points for Pollard. Alvin Kamara, 9.5. But our wide receivers continue to save us every single week. JSN had 27. Amike Ibuka had 31. Those are definitely going to be locked and loaded wide receivers for us moving forward. Our opponent at Amon-Ra, same round, 18 points. If Amon-Ra had a touchdown, that would have been at least a 25-plus point outing. Adam Thielen got a goose egg. Zach Ertz had a goose egg as well. Tyler Warren for us, 14 points. Cam Scadaboo had 14. Meanwhile, Zay Flowers had 12. Looking at the defenses, Seahawks, rough one for them, giving up 38 points. They had -5 points. Definitely their worst outing of the season in fantasy football. The Eagles only had 1 point. So you know what? If we played a better defense, we might have been more concerned with that. Then kickers, Jake Bates had 5 and Kaimi Fairbairn had 18. So overall, everybody got at least a double digits outside of Alvin Kamara and the Seahawks. So overall, best performance of the season for us. We almost got to 150. We will take it. Looking at the bench, I think we pretty much made every single call right. We wouldn't even put Brian Thomas into the lineup because, we can't put him into Alvin Kamara's situation. Chase Brown got us 11, Jameson Williams 2, Bo Nix got 17, RJ Harvey 6, Alec Amanor had 3, Zach Charbonnet had 11. So overall, I think we did make all the right calls this week. You see there, George Kittle. We do have the injured reserve. So looking at all the other scores there, so you had 147 to 79. 139 to 126, 128 to 1. The Birds are just killing every team so far this season. 114 to 62, and then 126 to 82. So let's go ahead and look at the standings just to see where we stand. I know that I said I was in third place, but I do want to check out how we are in total points. So looks like we do have 2 5-0 teams here with the Birds and Ben's best team. We actually have 3 3-2 teams, so we're sitting in third place. You have Doge and MDR at 3-2. You have 2 2-3 teams, 2 1-4 teams, and then you have 1 0-5 team with Jeff's scary team there. So look at the stats. Let's go to points for. We're actually number 2 in this. The Birds is just by far the best team in this league so far. We have 620, us 762, so a lot to catch up if we do want to get to that. But points against, really right in the middle there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So right in the middle there. We'll take it. So far, we're 3-2. Streak now is at 1. So I do want to go to the recent activity just to see what moves went down on the waiver wire to see if there was anything worth a note. So it looks like a kicker got at it. Matt Prater for Brandon McManus. Looks like the Birds finally dropped Austin Eckler. Darius Slate, he had a Darius Slate. I don't know about that. Darius Slayton now injured. Will be playing tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe he's just not looking at the news. Looks like Rico Dowdle was at it. Was dropped actually for a kicker for Chase McLaughlin. You saw Michael Carter. Well, this was all on Thursday. Really, the only move that happened overnight was a kicker. Matt Prater for Brandon McManus, but you could see what happened last week. So really no movement. So we'll see if we can have any players that we could pick up here. We'll just go through each position. I'll give you some players that you could roster yourselves. So let's go to the quarterback position first, and we'll move through here. So Matthew Stafford would definitely be a nice option for us, but I think that we're going to be just going with Bo Nix, but we'll see if I do change my mind at the end of this. You see the bye weeks, J.J. McCarthy, C.J. Stroud on the bye. I wouldn't start Jackson Dart. That's a very tough matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. Same with Trevor Lawrence. Tua, tough matchup. Wouldn't start him. Sam Darnold, honestly, a plus matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you're in a super flex league and you have Bryce Young, put him in the lineup. This would definitely be the matchup for him to have a good outing against the Dallas Cowboys. So I'll pause here. We do have a question coming in here. Should I drop Slayton for Burden or Emmanuel Wilson? I'm thin at running back, so I thought Wilson could be a good stash unless Jacobs gets hurt. I would definitely cut Slayton. I don't think that Slayton's going to be too much for you moving forward. He's injured as well, so either or would be good. I think that Luther Burden in the long term, I think you would have to bank on a DJ Moore injury. So, yes, if you do need some running back options, Emmanuel Wilson would be a nice stash moving forward there. So, yes, I would pick up Emmanuel Wilson to be a nice stash unless Jacobs gets hurt. So, yes, that would be a good option to pick up there. Let's go back to the waiver wire here. Outside of that, I just don't really see any quarterbacks. Maybe Mac Jones, if he does start, he does get a solid matchup against Tampa Bay. Let's go on to the running backs here. Let's see. So we have Kenneth Gainwell, Hassan Haskins, Kareem Hunt. So out of all these running backs, I would definitely keep an eye out if Jalen Warren doesn't play in this game. It is a tough matchup against Kenny Gainwell. But if you're very desperate at running back, I would pick up Kenneth Gainwell as well as Hassan Haskins. This is a solid matchup. Again, going up against the Miami Dolphins, who according to ESPN ranks 28th against the running back position. Looking at the wide receivers, you have Jerry Jeudy, Travis Hunter. Pretty thin. I mean, if you do need an option, Romeo Doubs would be a nice option. We mentioned Trey Tucker, but outside of that blow-up game, what really has he done? I mean, he's given us 4 points and 11 points. It was a solid game. Had 4 receptions, 62 yards against the Indianapolis Colts. So you have a nice matchup against the Tennessee Titans and you have the Chiefs. But really outside of that, I mean, I can't really trust this Raiders offense moving forward. Troy Franklin, honestly, would be an underrated piece for us to pick up. Hollywood Brown, I wouldn't touch, especially with Rasheed Rice coming back. So really outside of this, I think Troy Franklin and Romeo Doubs would be the guys that I'd be looking at. The tight end position, you got David Njoku, Dalton Kincaid. Let's go ahead and talk about Dalton Kincaid for a little bit. He was ranked the tight end 2 this week. So really look at this. I mean, he's gotten 14-7, 17, 9, and 16. So 108 receiving yards. It is a tough matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. But coming off of the bye week in week 7, he's got the Carolina Panthers and he's got the Dolphins. Honestly, this is a really solid schedule moving forward. So I think that if you do have Dalton Kincaid available in your lineups and you do need a tight end, go pick him up. It is a tough matchup against the Falcons, but it's a solid offense. So I definitely think he could save his day. And then after that, it's a really nice schedule setting up for him after that. Other tight ends, David Njoku, he definitely had his breakout game of the season. We'll see what that pertains to. Yeah, Mason Taylor, nice ad there, and Harold Fannin as well. So those would be, you got Jake Tongs of the San Francisco 49ers, but he's only going to be good for this week and this week only because George Kittle is going to be coming back in week number 7. Theo Johnson, a nice ad too, but tough matchup once again against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I would be hesitant of starting him this week. And then let's just go ahead and look at the defenses. I always like to see what defense we can stream this week. So definitely the Packers against the Bengals, ranked 32nd. The Colts against the Cardinals, that's another plus matchup. Browns against the Steelers, that would be a tricky one. But if you do need a defense, if the Packers or Colts are not available, I would definitely pick up the Browns. And then the Chargers against the Dolphins would be another defense that you could pick up as well. So let's go ahead and look at our roster just to see if we do need to change anything. So Jared Goff, I don't think I'm going to be starting him. I think we are going to be going towards Bo Nix against the New York Jets, but man, do we pick up Matthew Stafford here? Actually, I mean, I think honestly, both have really good matchups. I think we could really just drop Alec Amenor. I just don't think that he's really going to do anything for us like in the present day. But we are going to be honestly, screw it. I think we do go with Matthew Stafford. But honestly, you know what? Let's just trust our guy, Bo Nix. All right. So we're going to go Bo Nix against the New York Jets. I mean, we just saw Dak Prescott have himself a day. It's in London, but I think that he's going to do just fine there. But we do have to pick up a kicker, Ka'imi Fairbairn. Well, I kind of want to keep Ka'imi Fairbairn. So we're just going to drop Alec Amenor for another kicker. So let's go ahead and pick up a kicker here really quick. So let's see what kick. I don't really want to drop Ka'imi because Ka'imi has really been solid for us. So I did see Chase McLaughlin. I think we are going to be picking him up unless I see another solid option. Yeah, Matt Gay going up against the Bears. So yeah, I think we're going to go with Chase McLaughlin. McLaughlin as well has really been a top 10 fantasy option. So we're going to be dropping Alec Amenor in favor of him. I know might be a little controversy that we're dropping the Tennessee Titans wide receiver, but I'm going to be keeping Ka'imi Fairbairn coming off of the bye week. So we're going to be putting Chase McLaughlin into our lineup. And I think that's really going to be the moves for us. I think that we're going to continue to roll Cam Scatterboo against the Eagles, and then the wide receivers don't really touch. And, I mean, out of Alvin Kamara, I mean, we don't really have another option outside of him. R.J. Harvey has gotten more receptions, but J.K. Dobbins is a clear RB1. So I think that this is going to be the lineup that we're going to be rolling with here heading into week number 6. So before we get into our current matchup, we do have a question coming in here. So let's go ahead and get into this. So non-PPR, start one quarterback. Kyler Murray, Danny Dimes, Bo Nix, Mac Jones, or Sam Darnold need upside playing against Love this week. So I already said it. I don't really like the matchup for Kyler Murray. Daniel Jones, so it'd either be between Daniel Jones, Michael Penix, Mac Jones, or Sam Darnold. To be honest with you, I'm going to roll the hot hand and Sam Darnold in this matchup. It's either to me between Mac Jones or Sam Darnold, but I really like the matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know we just saw Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is no Sam Darnold is no Patrick Mahomes, but if you're looking for upside, I think that Sam Darnold would definitely provide that this week against the Jags. Full PPR, start one, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, or Quentin Johnson. Now, the Chargers do have a solid matchup against the Miami Dolphins, so I'm going to ride with the big play there of QJ there. Olave is going to get a ton of targets against the Patriots. DK Metcalf, I think, is kind of going to fall off a little bit, so I'm going to go with Quentin Johnson. That's a really plus matchup against the Miami Dolphins. So go with QJ. I think I wouldn't be surprised if QJ does get a touchdown and a lot of big plays because the Dolphins secondary, let's be honest, has been absolutely pathetic this season. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the current matchup to see what the projections are for both teams, to see what our opponent's record heading into this matchup. So let's go ahead and dive into that really quick. So let's go ahead and get into that. So hopefully it loads for us here. We will see what we are up against. All right, let's see. So also a 3-2 team, so a big matchup. We are projected to win right now. We're at 123.4 to 111.1. So he has Justin Fields against the Broncos. Fields has really been consistent in fantasy football. Like even in the blowout, he still was able to get to 25 fantasy points. But you really look at the overall advantage. ESPN's giving us the advantage in both quarterback and running back. We are going up against Kenneth Walker and J.K. Dobbins. We have Saquon and Alvin Kamara. Wide receivers, is it really close? Devontae Adams and Michael Pittman. Adams is going to have a nice day against the Ravens. Pittman as well against the Cards. But JSN against the Jags and Ibuka against San Francisco 49ers. I definitely like that. And then Tyler Warren versus Hunter Henry. This is going to be a tough matchup. He has Breece Hall in his flex. And then Jason Myers as a kicker. So, right now we're favored to win this one by 12 points. But this is going to be a tough one. We're both 3-2, so I do expect this one to come down to the wire. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in to tonight's show. We are going to be doing this every single Wednesday. So we'll be back next week. We'll be recapping what happened in week number 6. And then we will give you some more starts and sits heading into week number 7. So good luck to you this week in your fantasy football matchups. Hopefully you pull away with a win and continue on your hot streak heading into the playoffs. So let's go ahead and get us a win this week. So I do appreciate everybody for tuning in to tonight's stream. I appreciate everybody's questions. Hopefully I was able to help everybody out. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I'll catch you all next time in the next live stream. We'll also have some more content throughout the rest of the week with our college football preview show, so definitely stay tuned into that, and we will catch you all next time. So long for now.